he asked me, he's like, well, what's your goal? And I was like, well, I know I'm not going to make money from the event. Like if I could break even, that would be amazing. And hopefully someday we do. But more importantly, what we will sell out of the event, we just look at the event as what is our client acquisition cost? And it's actually, the interesting thing is it's higher than a lot of other ways. However, the experience from a brand standpoint of being seen as a thought leader on a stage, on your own stage, the credibility, also the retention of clients that either come in at an event or come to an event is so much longer and so much higher from a customer value standpoint.
Yeah, long-term customer value, I bet, is like
100%
through the roof.
I mean, we're talking $50,000 on some of my customers.
Yep.
I mean, I should say clients. And I will also say with that, they have become really friends. And I tell people, you don't have to be my friend to work with me, but if you work with me, you'll be my friend. But it is a very different relationship and depth that you go into at an in-person 3 or 4 day event than it is at, even if I see someone on Zoom 30 times.
100%. How are entrepreneurs like us daring bravely to build a stage, ditch the sweatpants, and step up to the mic? How do we create our own transformative events so we can get our message out into the world in a bigger way that's not only profitable, but it's actually something we can be proud of? That's the question. And the answers are inside this podcast. My name is Sarah Pfeiffer. Welcome to Greenroom Central. Today I brought into Greenroom Central Studios Rebecca Cafiero, CEO and founder of the Pitch Club. Rebecca is a business and visibility strategist, a TEDx speaker, podcast host, and best-selling author. As a founder and CEO of the Pitch Club, a 7-figure for women by women company, she has worked with hundreds of female entrepreneurs, growing and scaling to increase their credibility, visibility, and profitability in business. Rebecca, welcome to Greenroom Central Studios. Say hello to Lynchpin Nation.
Hello, Lynchpin Nation. I'm excited to be here at 8 o'clock at night. It's very rare I do a podcast in the dark unless it's at 5 a.m. So
it's so much better for the lighting though, isn't it?
So cool. Well, now I'm like, I need a ring light on the other side, but I'm excited to be here and, chat with another, secondary Oregonian.
I know. What a fun fact that we found out about each other as we hopped on today, that we're both Oregonians. It's rare.
With English cream golden retrievers.
Yes. What is the name of your pup?
Her name is Olive, and ChatGPT helped me with that because my husband is in ag tech and he's Italian. And so he's like, I wanted an Italian name and he wanted an agri name. And I'm like, well, Olive is an Italian thing that is also agriculture.
So that's so funny, Sam. Ours is Max because the puppy in Little Mermaid is named Max. And
Prince Eric's little puppy,
yes,
right?
Prince Eric's dog. And our neighbor 2 doors down, her dog is an English cream golden retriever and named Olive. And Max, it's like his girlfriend. And so we actually we have to be careful about coming in and out of the house, the front door, because he will see his opportunity and bolt out of the house, like without fail, straight to her front door to see if she can play.
I love it. I can't wait for Olive to have buddies like that.
So when I was doing my research for the show, I learned that we have so much in common. And I got so darn excited to talk about you. I mean, come on, we're both moms and entrepreneurs, and we love plant-based eating and Peloton and Be Still My Heart, Carmel by the Sea. And we really value the
magical place on earth.
It is. And we just both really value the time that we spent in network marketing. We love personal optimization. I could go on and on about that. How-tos is my life.
How-to girls.
Journaling in the sauna. That's actually where I was right before our call today. I just think this is going to be so much fun.
I love it. I'm like, good thing we don't have a time stop. This might be a double episode.
So I thought I'd start by having a little fun and asking you to share a story. And the whole premise of this show is around the belief that being in the room is everything. And a little backstory for you. So just over 6 years ago, I stepped into my very first 4-day personal development seminar, and it changed my life. And within 11 months of being in that room, I had left the Midwest where I'd been my entire life, moved my family to the Pacific Northwest. I left my 16-year corporate career and started my own business. We paid off all the debt we'd been under for over a decade and a half. It was a massive shift. And if you told me that prior, like I would have I would have said you're absolutely crazy. I'm so risk averse. And so to start us off today, I'm wondering if you would share a story of a room that you made it into that changed your life.
That is it's a good question. And it's so interesting because looking back now, it was an event also. I was very solidly in my corporate career. And what I now realize was my zone of excellence, not my zone of genius. And I was living a life that looked really good on paper. But we're human beings. We are three-dimensional beings. And so I had the title, I was the youngest VP, the only female, all of these things. And I was like daydreaming about other things. And I just couldn't see myself staying in that career, especially with wanting to have children. I didn't have kids at the time. And I was working 80 hours a week, a lot of travel, and not like glamorous travel. It was like Hilton Garden Inn travel, by car usually. And network marketing was the tool. Was not interested in it, fell in love with the product, which I think is most people's stories. I don't think many people come in like, yes, I want an opportunity. But I actually had such an incredible product transformation. And then I started to refer it to my friends. And I'm an Enneagram 7, which is the visionary, but I go into in my 5, which is like the expert, the researcher. And so I started like wanting to research to understand the product, thinking I need to be an expert on the product to help people. And I went to an event thinking I was going to go learn all of the science. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to learn everything so I can explain it, be this product expert. And it was about 5% about the product. There was a lot of transformation and belief. And it was so much more about the vision, the goal setting, all of those things. Now, I've always been a positive like dreamer. I hired my first life coach at 26 and I'm about to turn 44. So that was like 2006. Life coaching wasn't even a thing. And it was like, my coach was in person. And I used to drive a lot for my job. I was in the car typically anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a week. And so I would listen to, at the time, it was like CDs on tape. And, I was always, because I was in sales, I was always looking at, how can I improve? How can I optimize? How can I, learn a new language, those types of things. But I'd never seen it put together in the way that it was in that room, in the standpoint of before and after transformation, not just physically, but really from a lifestyle, financial, what is possible, hope. And I'd never seen painted so succinctly, like what is possible if you put not just your mind, right, but really like have a bigger vision. And this idea that when your vision is bigger, not only does it light you up and make you magnetic, but more importantly, it has to pull you through fear and uncertainty. And it's so interesting because I was just I'm reading the 12-week year right now. And it was talking about like, I know, such a good book. And I started it a few years ago and I'm like rereading it to like fresh start for the year, redoing my calendar. But it talks about that. It talks about like, if you're feeling a lack of passion, it's that your vision's not big enough. And the importance of having that big vision is it needs to be so compelling that it can pull you through the fear, uncertainty, challenges that are meant to happen. So I went to that event, came back, was like, I'm going to go full force again into the business, which I never was going to do. I didn't think I would do. And that was May of, I'm trying to think, 2012. And by September, I was making 10K a month in my network marketing business. And I ended up leaving my corporate career with like, close to $250,000 a year compensation by the following year. No, I take it back. I left that same year.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I left that same year. I gave 3 months notice. So by September, I'd replaced my salary and I could see the trajectory to replace my bonuses. And more importantly, it was just the freedom. And I left. And, of course, that was 10 years ago, actually. And that started me into the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel similarly that the being in network marketing showed me what's possible and allowed me to step into a vision where I could see that it was possible for me. Like before that, being in corporate America, I never saw a possibility. Like I could never envision myself sitting in the corner office. It just didn't, I couldn't see it. But
Well, I could
then
see
I,
it, but it was an achievement mode, and I would keep coming back to like, yeah, I can achieve, but it's not sustainable.
mm,
'Cause the
mm,
achievement always came at a cost because it wasn't fulfillment. It was a success metric that wasn't really mine.
so true. Yeah. And then so then being in network marketing and seeing people that just kind of like looked, I just felt like I could see myself in them.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, I actually think I'm made for more here. And
Right,
it's
right.
not in this circle. It's somewhere else.
Mhm. I brought my husband to an event, and he's an engineer, Virgo, like masters from Stanford, not your typical, and he wasn't really interested in network marketing, but he went to one of the events and it just got him to dream bigger. And I would have friends that would come and they're like, I don't even really want to build a business. I'm just coming to like get full of life for whatever I'm doing. But he decided to go from engineering into product management. And
Mm,
then ended up after that, we ended up, I talked him into going to Tony Robbins. Basically, I said this because I heard it was great. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to go, like, let's go all the way. So our first event, my first Tony event, his first ever personal development event of any type was Tony Robbins Date with Destiny VIP tickets.
oh my
That
gosh.
is, that is like, learning to swim and like swimming the English Channel. 6 days, like, I don't know, 16 hours, 18 hours a day. And he came back and life happened. He ended up I'm trying to think how much longer it was. He had a cancer diagnosis, and we went through a pretty brutal
Mm,
time with that. And he decided to quit his job. He was doing an MBA at the time. He quit his job, finished his MBA, and started a startup. And also hired a coach, hired a therapist, started meditating,
oh my gosh.
like just, I mean, he went because again, he came from like the very academic world that was very
Yes.
achievement based. He's still very achievement based. He's an Enneagram 3, but he went into a totally different area of like the work on himself. And he sold that company that he started then 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now.
Wow.
I mean, it was a life changing event. It was a life changing event. He
What a
sold it
life.
to John Deere, actually, since you're from the Midwest.
What was the last one?
He sold this company to John Deere.
Oh yeah.
It
Yeah.
was the second largest acquisition in Deere history, and we look back, and he always says, he's like, "This would have never happened had you not shown me what was possible." And that
Mm,
started with you being
hmm.
willing to leave a prestigious job and have people say, like, "What are you doing?" And you followed what you were excited about, what made you happy, what
Yeah.
gave you the lifestyle that you wanted. And he goes, like, had you not done that, and I saw a different path, because
Mm,
his dad is an engineer, he's an engineer. He's like, I would have never taken that
exactly.
risk
Wow.
to get
What a
into it.
well-timed room for him to get into with Date with Destiny.
I even told him, I even bought the tickets. And I said, you don't even have to pay me back. Like, you don't even have to buy your ticket. Like, we were married, and I was like, I got it. I'll cover the whole trip. He got home and he goes, I'm going to pay you for my ticket because it was so valuable.
Wow. That's the first thing I did after I got into one of those personal development rooms. I told my husband, I have to take you to this. I can't even explain what just
Right.
happened in there. We have to go together.
Well, because it's an experience that can't be explained, right? It has to be felt.
Yeah. For me, it was Brendan Burchard, his
Oh,
High
I love
Performance
him.
Academy. Yeah.
I haven't been to one of his events, but I have been to events where he is keynoted.
Mm, just so good.
So good.
So I have been producing events for 20 years now, and I can spot someone living out their purpose through events from a mile away. Tell me what lights you up most about hosting your own signature event, which is called Weekend at the Pitch Club, right?
Weekend of the Pitch Club. That is my event that I've been doing. And we just did our third one.
Okay.
But I've been doing events longer than that, though never with any formal training.
Okay.
Um, what I've realized, and again, I love the Enneagram. I found out my Enneagram type in 2020, and it gave me a lot of permission because I actually thought I was an achiever, and people would think I don't know. Do you know your Enneagram
I'm
type?
a 2.
Oh my gosh. So that's my what's called tri-type. By the way, anyone who's obsessed with Enneagram, Tracy O'Malley is like the queen of Enneagram. Her test is like no other test. Most tests are wrong. So I would have people say like, oh, you're a 3 because you're a high achiever. Like got the goals. But what it really was is I was a 7 in that was aligned. And I have a lot of 8. So my thinking center, my visionary center is the visionary, right? The 7. My heart center is a 2. And my action center is an 8, which means I have a lot of really big ideas, but I'm all about helping people, but I can be in massive action and certainty if I'm aligned. So back to that. And I mean, I think like I even like doing like, when I say parties in high school, I don't mean like parties, but like I was the one that would be like, let's get together for movie night. And, when I was in my 20s and in Las Vegas, where everyone that worked with me in sales was like a very transient kind of thing. I was one throwing Thanksgivings and barbecues. And then in network marketing, I mean, a big part of how I grew my business is I would do these things called sweat and sips. And it was like a workout, and it was a nutrition company. So it was like workout and like smoothies after, but it turned into this community. And I would have 10 to 20 women come to my house every week. And there was no sale, there was nothing. It was very, casual. But when I was like, I wanted to do something more. I knew after a few years of network marketing, I'm like, this was an amazing bridge. But what I actually missed from corporate when I was a VP of sales and marketing is being able to create. Like the creativity. I was a new home. Well, I was a VP of sales in a new home sales company. And so whether it was like working with designers on the models and who was our target consumers, and then a lot of experiences, right? Model home park openings, and I would do sales events for my team where we would have call-a-thons once a quarter, which again, themed prizes, like all the fun.
Yes.
But the Enneagram taught me that my superpower is creating experience. Like I'm not afraid of intensity. I love experience and community building. And what I realized is I've been doing that all along, not necessarily with any motive or necessarily purpose, but I did that innately. So I started doing, I think I did in network marketing, like my first leadership retreat. So like qualified leaders, and I brought them to a house for 3 days, and we did branding shoots and personal development and business development. And I just was so hooked on the experience of facilitating.
So
it was 2016. I brought my mom and my son, who was like 6 months old.
Wow.
So I could like nurse, in between sessions. And then I was like, I really want to do this. But what I realized is, the reason that, again, so grateful for network marketing, but it's a volunteer army. And I really realized I wanted to support people, I wanted to work with people, not just who wanted to work within that business. And having a background in sales and marketing, I could see opportunities in different businesses. So I launched a business called Brand Camp, and we did in 3 years, 2018, 19, and then January 2020. So really, in 2 calendar years, we did 5 retreats with 10 to 20 women plus staff, makeup artists, photographers. And then we did 2 workshops. And that's where I really was like, okay.
Wow.
And during that time, I put down a deposit at a hotel for I think it was like a minimum of 50 up to 100 people. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to fill this room. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to teach it and give an experience like you have in a 3-day retreat or 4-day retreat. I go, but I know I'm going to do it. And that obviously got sidelined with COVID, and I shut down the old business, started a new business, and I had that event March of 2022.
Wow. So let's talk a little like business and money about Weekend at the Pitch Club. And it seems like you have just so much experience in the experience side of it. And a lot of entrepreneurs that I see come in that similar vein, but they struggle with the money side of things. And I'd love to know, how do you balance that? And what are you like? Is it a profit center for you, or do you feel like just breaking even and like most people?
Right.
So how's it
there's
going?
3 different points. There's three different points. Is one is the type of event I knew I wanted to create, and when we're talking the bigger events, I still actually do a lot of like local events at my house. Um, but I wanted to create something. I often saw events that had either a ton of inspiration, but
Mm.
you'd walk away and you're like, wait, do I really have like a clear cut strategy walking out like an action plan?
Yeah.
Or it's the events with a ton of information, like a lot of conferences. You're like, you go from session to session, but there's no, either it's information and the person's not dynamic. So you don't feel like inspired, or it just isn't, it doesn't like tie it up in a nice bow. So you go home energized and a strategy. So I knew I wanted to create that. So that was first, is getting really clear on that. The second thing is I'm really great at attracting incredible people. I've never put out a job posting. Everyone has came organically. But I've never looked for someone, but they've always been the right fit. And I see their genius and I get out of their way. It's also just what makes me a great strategist. So my operations manager, her job that she had before is, well, she actually still does it kind of on the side for fun, but she does TV show conventions.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
So she's done Stranger Things and even Star Trek and what's the show? Supernatural. She's been doing that for years. So she comes from an event management background.
Yes.
And while it's a little different than entrepreneur events, there still is like understanding how to negotiate, like understanding minimums,
Right.
working with event designers,
Yep.
photographers, the audio teams, all of these things, and understanding both the macro and the micro at the same time. And that's a very specific type of personality. And I will say to everyone listening who wants to plan an event, you do not, even if it's an event of like 12 to 16 people, I always make sure there's a second person there, because I cannot be looking at every single detail and also facilitating an experience where I'm connected to the attendees. So that has been a lot of it, is I just have had a phenomenal team. To your question of profit or money, maybe it's because of my background in real estate, where we would put on a $40,000 event, knowing no one was paying for tickets, but we would sell houses out of it. So it was a lost leader, if you will, meaning, again, the event in itself wasn't profitable, but what came out of the event was, right, leads to sales, or even selling there. Like we would open up interest list, or set up contract appointments. And my mentor, who puts on events, and so does his wife, he asked me, he's like, well, what's your goal? And I was like, well, I know I'm not going to make money from the event. Like if I could break even, that would be amazing. And hopefully someday we do. But more importantly, what we will sell out of the event, we just look at the event as, what is our client acquisition cost? And it's actually, the interesting thing is, it's higher than a lot of other ways. However, the experience from a brand standpoint of being seen as a thought leader on a stage, on your own stage, the credibility, also the retention of clients that either come in at an event or come to an event, is so much longer and so much higher from a customer value standpoint.
Yeah, long-term customer value, I bet, is like
100%
through the roof.
I mean, we're talking $50,000 on some of my customers.
Yep.
I mean, I should say clients. And I will also say, with that, they have become really friends. And I tell people, you don't have to be my friend to work with me, but if you work with me, you'll be my friend. But it is a very different relationship and depth that you go into at an in-person 3 or 4 day event than it is at, even if I see someone on Zoom 30 times.
100%.
So yes, we have absolutely, like, and I was just sharing with you, I just did a little back of napkin math, and I launched the Pitch Club officially in September of 2020. So we are 3 years and 4 months old. We have done 2 million in revenue, and around 750 of that has came from the 3 events.
Wow.
And that's not even like events at my house that are very low budget, just like, come on over. And I put out some apps, and, and those have led to, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 clients that came as a guest of another client.
Wow. And so are you making an offer at the event, or do you just have outstanding follow-up afterwards?
We're making an offer at the event. Okay. Our follow-up after is actually the area that we're continuing to improve, because again, I love the magic of the container of the event. I am never better. And actually, I don't know if you have an Aura ring. If you don't,
not yet. It's on my wish list.
Oh my gosh,
one's so bad.
I highly recommend it. So it's really interesting. They just did this update, and you can see your stress levels throughout the day.
Oh.
And
is it like a mood ring? Does it change colors?
No, it doesn't change colors. You have to I have to sync it up with your app, and I think there's about an hour lag. but it has 4 levels. It has stressed, engaged, relaxed, and restored or restoration.
Mm.
And it doesn't track weirdly when you're sleeping, it doesn't track it. But when you're awake, it tracks it. And what I found in my day-to-day life is from 6 to 8 a.m., which is when my children are awake and I'm trying to get them off to school, and from like 6 to 8 p.m., which I'm usually with my kids by like 4:30 or 5, but those are my most stressed hours unless I'm doing a workout, and that's also stressed. My time with my clients is usually in the relaxed category. If I'm training, like I just finished a 9-day masterclass, I'm in the relaxed category. When I was at my last event where literally this data came in like 3 days before it was the update, the day I sold, so I was the event starts at 9 a.m. and I think we finished at 6. So it's, call it 8 hours with lunch.
Yes.
I was probably on stage 3 of those hours. I had keynotes the others. I was in restoration mode for almost 4 hours out of the 8. Selling, answering questions, speaking. And I'm like, okay, events are my jam, right?
Wow.
If I could do events, if I could be Tony Robbins, not exactly his style, but like do events, 5 days a week, I would 100% do that. I love them. And I do think that has been part of why we've made the income or really attracted the clients at those events, is because you can feel that energy. It's not energy that can be faked.
Yeah. And I love that you have mentioned that you have support at your events. And I find that you just cannot be in your highest and best energy and self when you're also schlepping boxes, or if you're worried that, about some sort of detail, and you have to be able to let go and separate and know that you can trust that there's your team is got the ball. And
100%. Well, and I've got Brittany, my operations manager, who's like handling every small detail from like, oh, we're running a little over, like communicating with, the food services and AV and all of this. And then I have Elise, who's our director of marketing, and she is copywriting background, funnel builder, but also just a huge heart, Enneagram 4, like feels everything. And I joke, I joke that if I had an earpiece, she could just speak directly to me, but she'll be like in between. She's like, okay, this, or like feeling the energy here. And so she'll give me little tips or prompts. And I'm, because I love speaking and I've done it enough times, I can be in flow where I'll have an outline, but I don't memorize or anything. I'm like, what do I want people to feel? But being intuitive in the moment. And she's able to, like, even the night before, sometimes we rearrange things based on the feeling of the day. And that is a gift that I get to go up on stage and do what I do best, because I have people that are incredible at what they're doing as well.
I do have a client that uses the IFB, the in-ear, and has their number 2 be able to
do
talk.
They really?
Yeah.
We haven't gone that far. That would be interesting. My thing though is, because I really think there is a magic to being on stage. I don't know how that would. I don't know how that would like affect my energy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like ChatGPT. It's nice to know that there's a tool when you need it, but like I don't want it to do everything for me. You know?
No, just be up there, be in flow, and allow the magic, the serendipity of the room to
absolutely
co-create itself. So you shared on your show, the Becoming You podcast, that Masterminds have just been life-changing for you. And you also lead your own mastermind, the Inner Circle. And I know you are continuously evolving it to do better and serve your community. And I'm kind of curious, what element of the space that you've created in the Inner Circle fills you with the most gratitude?
Well, to the first part of the question, like masterminds, I joined my first mastermind in 2018, pregnant with my daughter, and it was transformative. And the transformation starts before you even like really step into the container. It starts when you invest at a high level, because you take what you're doing very seriously. So it puts you in that energy. I think the energy of possibility. And my first one, I look back and it felt so big. It was like $14,000. Right. And now the one I'm in, this is my third year, is 50,000. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that 14,000 felt expensive.
Right.
But I remember the very first retreat I went to, again, back in 2018, I didn't even have the pitch club. Actually, I think it was 2019. And I remember one of the girls was like, I'm going to have $100,000 month this month. Now, I'd had some big months in corporate when I got paid a bonus, where I think I probably made right around 100,000, but that was like once a year. And I just remember going, what? She's going to make $100,000. Like, and she did it. And I looked at her and I was like, wait. She like, I had a part-time, integrator. She had a part-time integrator. I had 2 kids. She had 3 kids. And I was like, there's nothing that like is massively different about us.
Right.
But she has belief that she can do it and she's doing it. And so one, I think it helps you believe because you see that people are just human beings and the things that are making them successful. Like, yes, maybe it's consistency, but it's like, well, they have a really good strategy and they have support, or they've hired someone who's done it before, or, it's most of those things are pretty duplicatable. And so when I started my mastermind, which was 2 years later, I knew there were certain components that I absolutely wanted to have in it, which like making sure the women are on a similar level so that people are invested, making sure that they're also collaborative. That's one of the biggest things, because most of the women were pretty collaborative, but occasionally you get people that are just less so, and that affects the experience of the group. But what I saw a big opportunity for is reverse engineering the result I wanted. And I had my podcast, and I was doing some PR for myself that was kind of self-taught. And then I had written my book and released it. And what I realized, I was like, okay, I didn't do any of these things to like necessarily be seen as an expert. I did them because I was excited about it and it felt like something fun. And I felt like I needed to birth the podcast and birth the book. But what everyone kept saying is, oh my gosh, you're such an expert because you've done that. And then I had women that were like, well, I just want to do what you've done. Like, how did you do that? I'm like, well, in a very failing forward, flawed, way, I would do so many things differently and better in retrospect. And so when I launched my first mastermind, I was like, well, everyone keeps saying they want my results. So I'm going to make sure they become a best-selling author. I'm going to make sure that their branding looks beautiful, because I've always like loved things to look pretty, at least in, since my professional world. I'm like, I had a $2 million advertising and marketing budget in corporate. I do not have that now. So I'm like, how can I look like $1 million brand far before I was a 7-figure brand, And so there were just certain things that I was like, we're going to do this. And I can remember I had a doctor in my first mastermind, and she's like, how are you actually going to do this in 6 months? And I'm like, well, I've put it into a path that is very doable and isn't confusing. Because the one other thing I would say that I sometimes experienced in mastermind types of groups is, while all the speakers were usually amazing, or the experts, sometimes it was a little bit of whiplash. It was like, okay, this is a really cool person that's going to inspire, but what they do could actually be very distracting from your goal. Because they're coming in and saying like, you need to use chatbots. And the next person's like, no joke, like a sex expert, like, you need to be orgasming every day for your creativity. And I'm like, how can I do all of these things, right? And I wanted to make sure that I brought in people that, well, first I created a path to the result, or the reverse engineered path to what the deliverables were. And then that my experts coming in were supplementing or complementing that step in the journey. So it always felt very much like you're moving forward and we're not distracting them from their individual business goals. Because I also knew I didn't just want to work with coaches. Like, I love coaches, but it's like I'm looking up at the board here, and like just some of the mastermind women in my mastermind now, like a functional practitioner with 2 brick and mortars, a woman that's they have 54 franchises, someone that does insurance billing that's multiple 7 figures, like a CFO, a stylist with 3 assistants, like actually a PR agency, like a very diverse group of women. But they're aligned in that they're all looking to ideally scale their income. They all would actually like to work less or with more ease and flow. And all of them are spiritually open. And that is a big part of my group, is being open to the inner work, the woo, if you will.
Yes.
And so that, I think that's the ingredients of it. But we say that there's 5 components outside of like, we help people be seen as the expert in a way that's real, in a way that you step in energetically and in confidence, not just like doing things because they are vanity metrics. But there's obviously a lot of strategy, and that's one-on-one with me and my team. So they get to borrow my team. They have access to my operations manager, especially because a lot of people want to do events. They have access, and not at the level you do, because I was just looking through your like fill your event. I was like, oh my goodness, we do a great job, and we have a lot of great areas we can optimize. Our director of marketing, she does like copy office hours with them, where she'll help them like rewrite their logos or their slogans or their niche statements or whatever it is. So that's number one. We say spotlight. We do actually do PR for everyone. So we have a PR team of 3 that is incredible. And so every single woman on that team will get at least one, or sorry, in the group will get at least one speaking engagement. We just landed someone at TEDx yesterday. Not the last group, but the group before that, I had every single person did national TV. Now, if they tell me they don't want to speak, I'm not going to force them, right?
Yeah.
Everyone became a best-selling author. Now, it was a collaborative book. I didn't force them all to write, a full-length book. And they all had media, ranging from ABC, NBC, CBS, InStyle, New York Times. Like we got them, top placement. And that, though, again, those are just a few of the things. So spotlight, strategy, support from the other women. And we sign accountability partners. Like we dive into the Enneagram day 1. And so they really get to know who they are, but they also get to see everyone else. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say we break people down, but like, it's such a inner exploration to go through that everyone understands each other and they have this common language. The soul care, I'm a big fan of breathwork. So I bring in somatic coaches to look at things like attachment styles or human design. I mean, like we really dig in deep to not only your motivations, but maybe some of the patterns you have from things that have nothing to do with what you're doing, but have everything to do with your future success or for future fulfillment. And then of course we also, we really focus on sales, because that was one of the other things I realized is every business runs on sales.
Yes.
Every business. And I saw in some of my first masterminds, I was like, oh, people are, even with all of the planning and all of the intentionality, people are getting really distracted by bright, shiny objects. And I'm like, listen, you're already going to get, the branding, you're going to get the PR, you're going to become a best-selling author, you're going to get all of this. And we're going to do it in a way that's really easy, so you don't have to go figure it out. Like we're going to give you the cliff notes and like literally hold your hand through the process. But maybe you don't need to also go write a solo book and launch a podcast and do all these things. I mean, for sure, podcast guesting. And I said, because your income should grow in this container. And for most, it 2x's in a year. Some I've had as much as 4x's, that were existing businesses, not like a new business. These are all women that are 150,000 plus, and probably more averaging like closer to $500,000 to $1 million. And so I really, really are focusing on sales, and usually with sales, it's systems, right? Because you can't scale past 200,000 unless you have some really good systems. You can scale to 200,000 on talent, but past that, it's not really going to happen.
I love systems.
So what I say, strategy, soul care, support, systems, sales, and the spotlight with the PR.
It's holistic, the approach.
It's 100%. And because that's the way I live my life. That's the way I do my business. Yeah. Like on Fridays, I have one meeting with my spiritual coach, and then I alternate back and forth between basically another spiritual, kind of coach that helps me deep dive, or my somatic coach. Like I bring into the group the same, I'd say, things and kind of percentage of time investment that I do myself. Because it's not, I mean, yes, sometimes we need better strategy, but a lot of times it's that we just haven't become the person to hold the strategy that we're getting, or to have the trust in our intuition to discern what is for us and what isn't.
So let's go there. Let's shift gears and talk about the inner game. And I know you're a huge fan of doing the work because of the results that you've seen for yourself, and you've shared that, it's dramatically impacted your business growth too. And so I'm curious, can you share a moment where you just know that you were a better coach and mentor in your business because of the work that you've done?
There's a few things that stand out. I went to IIN years ago. I never really wanted to like health coach, but it just helped me listen. And I think that's a big part of it. I also think that doing that work took me out of, again, I don't want to say I don't achieve, like we accomplish incredible things in a way that usually feels really good. Obviously we have our the good and the growth along the way. However, if we aren't confident in who we are, and from a standpoint of like massive amounts of self-love, acceptance, you could still want to always be better and always grow and always optimize, but like without having a lot of and confidence in who you are, and also the ability to put on blinders to like, I don't need to know what everyone else is doing because I'm going to follow what I'm meant for.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to be an approving energy. And I have found, as a coach, as a mentor, I mean, as a wife, even, as a friend, that when I was earlier on my growth journey and I would get triggered, I'm not really a jealous person. I usually get inspired by what someone's doing. But if I felt like I needed to up my game to show up, or I needed to prove by info dumping or giving, so much, that it didn't usually really serve the person. And as I've been through harder and harder things and survived them, and the interesting thing I think about that, and also just getting older, is maybe I am less confident. I'm so much more sure of myself, and it comes from a different place. And I think so much of that is the growth is realizing, let's just say network marketing. When I first got into personal growth, it feels like everything is possible. And like, I'm just going to like affirmation in my mindset way out of anything. And if you're having a bad day, then you just, whatever. And listen, that's like the foyer of personal growth. And then you realize like, actually, I'm going to become an archaeologist. And the more I do, the more there is. And, we could have a whole nother podcast on talking about generational trauma and, energy, past lives, like what's in your epigenetics, like all of those things. But I've just found that the more that I, dig deep into myself, and this is, literally from like a health standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, the more I dig deep and the more I take ownership without ever woe is meing, the better I show up as a coach, a mentor, a leader, a CEO, a wife, and a mother. Because we don't compartmentalize. It's in all the areas.
Yeah.
Hopefully I answered that question. It was maybe a long-winded answer, but
and you might have just touched on it, but in my family, we have a dinner table tradition where we share 3 things we're grateful for and something we learned that day, and then also something we're proud of. And in that spirit, I would ask, is there something that you could share that is a recent either business accomplishment or personal accomplishment that you're particularly proud of?
Oh my goodness.
I know we're just talking numbers, and that's like, 3 events making over 750 is pretty incredible. You also were sharing with me before we got on the $250,000 in sales that you made just from your, what did you call it? What kind of method? A profit?
So, the profit method.
Yeah, and from
say,
speaking. That's a lot to be proud of.
Actually, I think it's probably more than that. I think it's probably closer to $500,000. I just haven't ran the numbers.
Yeah.
And most of it came before I even realized there was a method. Right? Like I love the book, The Go-Giver. And when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, I have been doing a lot of these things intuitively, but I haven't been doing them on purpose, intentionally, and all at the same time. But if I think back to times in my life that I felt like in total flow and like opportunities were just coming, and I felt so excited about my life, it was because I was doing those things. So the profit method, I basically just sat down and I was like, what are the things that are happening when I'm, for example, I did it was like kind of like a webinar style. It was a live podcast that was aired. When it was aired live, there was about 320 people that were listening. It wasn't even watching. It was like listening. This is a couple of years ago. And I tracked the numbers on that. And that one appearance brought in $67,000 business in the next 60 days. And I have another one, a speaking engagement where, like, again, I went in person, and that was like, I met someone. I didn't even speak, actually. That was like $30,000 in networking. But, and I don't, by the way, I don't go into the room looking at people as numbers. I'm always like, there's someone here I'm meant to meet.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know who that is or why. But when I'm speaking, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's on someone else's stage, whether it's, I mean, in a Zoom room, which I love being in person, but also as a mom with 2 young children. And, sometimes it's just like Zoom is okay.
Yeah.
Because that works. But the profit method, so the P stands for pitch, or put yourself out there. That's really what it is, right? Is you need to not wait for opportunities to come to you. You need to go out and ask for things. Like, actually, you are a rare example. You DM'd me or dropped my DMs, but that is pretty rare. Normally, it's like putting yourself out there. And whether that's an application to speak at an event, like I've spoken at Mom 2.0 and Alt Summit and all kinds of events. I mean, a lot of stages. And it's one of two things. I either put myself out there and also done the rest of the method, or it's because I knew the person. But even then, sometimes they'll just ask, or I'll be like, hey, you got an event coming up. Like, here's how I could serve your audience, even if it's not a formal pitch. But you've got to be able to put yourself out there and be willing to do that. The R is the relationship building, right? And it is so important if you are pitching or you're requesting someone give you access to their platform, that there is a relationship built. Right? I mean, most people are not like you and do the amount of research and are like, oh, we're really aligned, I'm going to reach out to her. Like, again, this is like an exception to the rule. Most of the time what I see, and as a podcast host myself, is all the people that pitch me.
Oh, right. I get those too.
I mean, they're so terrible. Most of them are so terrible, right? I mean, my favorite is I get at least one pitch a week, and it's usually from an agent, a podcast agency, and they're pitching a man, which means they haven't gone to my podcast and even just read that I don't interview men. Like, every single person is, you could pretty much tell all the names are women, right? Or the other thing, and this is a really sad one, and I think it's, and I think this exists in network marketing, or at least did in the days of like send 50 cold DMs, right? Nick numbers game. Not something that I ever felt good about. I think I tried it like 5 times and I was like 5 people. And I was like, nope, that didn't feel good. Not going to do that. But is when I go to look someone up and I see they don't follow me on social media. And I'm like, wait a second, you want to put me in, we want me to put you in front of thousands of listeners or, tens of thousands of people on social media, but you couldn't like just click follow. And you, by the way, have done an exemplary job of like doing your homework before we're chatting. And I'm the guest. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, again, amazing. So the relationship building, I say, if the first time that you're pitching someone for an opportunity, whether it's their stage, their podcast, their mastermind group, whatever it is, or collaboration, and they've never seen your name until they get that email, you've lost. Like, nurture them, right? Like, be authentic, like share with them why they provided value in your life, why you would even be interested to then serve them also. The O is for offer. And a lot of people forget to do this when they have the opportunity to be visible. So I had a woman that I was doing a visibility strategy session for, and she was actually in my mastermind, the one that I'm in, not in the one that I facilitate. And she's like, yeah, I was told last year, like, get on as many podcasts as possible. And I was like, that's amazing. How many do you get on? She's like 300. I went, holy moly. I'm like, I think I do a lot of podcasts, and I probably guest on 1 or 2 a week, like maybe 50-ish a year. I'm going for quality, not quantity, right? And also just my schedule is full. And sometimes it's full of things like today where I take my daughter to a birthday party at lunch. But I said, you must have like made $1 million from that. Just based on the math. And that would only be like $3,000 an episode. And she's like, I don't think I really monetized it at all. And I was like, what? And now, don't get me wrong. No one should ever be selling on someone's podcast, ever. First of all, it's terrible form. And if the podcast host lets you, like, don't do that. Because someone listening is consuming free content. Or don't pitch to someone else's audience at their event. Like, I mean, when I say pitch, like, we'll talk about what you can give them. But don't be trying to pitch your products and services. That's not your stage. It's not your platform. Right. But what I see people also not do is give. So when I say offer something of value, but it's also O for opt-in.
Right.
So take something that relates to your keynote or your talk or whatever, and give them a tool that takes the information and the inspiration into activation or integration. That's what I like to say, the 3 I's of speaking, which we'll talk about also. So that's the PRO. The F is for follow-up. So if you are capturing them into an email, right, then there needs to be follow-up. So an example of this, I spoke at Mom 2.0. I think we had, I think like 90 people registered for my keynote. I don't think there was that many people in the room, but I had about 70-ish people that downloaded my lead magnet that day. I knew all of those were from Mom 2.0.
Wow.
But I built it into my keynote, right? So it was very intentional of the opt-in. And by the way, I'm not like, oh, download my lead magnet. And I'm not like, sign up for my newsletter. And I also don't do it at the end. I build it into the middle with a QR code, all
Those
of
are
the things.
really good numbers.
Well, but because I'm like, first, you build belief because you have belief in this is a strategy that is going to serve you. And here is why. And here's why it's also fun, because I don't do things I try not to do many things if they're not fun. But then here's the tool that is going to supercharge this information to make it easier. Right. So the F is follow up. So for example, that day when I had around the 70, I got back to my hotel room and I wrote up a personalized email instead of the regular nurture sequence. So, and then I had my head of marketing. I was like, hey, send this to them. So it's like, oh my gosh, I know that I was just with you at Mom 2.0. Maybe we rubbed shoulders outside in this little booth. Like I made it very personalized and about the event. And then my response rate was amazing. I think I had 17 people respond and 2 of them turned into clients. So the follow-up is really important. And of course, if you actually physically meet someone, like network, like my favorite thing to do is instead of like, let me have your card or connect with you on social, is I just give them my cell phone number. My team doesn't necessarily love that because then everyone has my cell phone if they become a client. But I'm like, it's all right. Like, I'm like, let's connect right now. And another thing you can do is like take a selfie with them and text it to them and with your name, because then you'll remember who they are. And they'll typically text you right back.
That's good. That's
well,
ninja right there.
So it's actually, I'm like, I'm not doing a strategy to, it's for me to remember because I will also forget.
Yeah.
And then the I is impact, and the impact, like, I think that goes without saying. Someone is not going to want to work with you or invite you back or any of the things if you don't create massive impact. So for me, the 3 I's of impact are you need to give them actual how-to. Too many people give fluff, right? It's like ideas, inspiration, but it's not like a path. And I know that you and I are very aligned on give the how-to. So that's the first thing is the information is digestible and usable. The second is inspiration. You do need to give belief and obviously things like telling stories or just being excited or whatever, the energy is, because you want them to not only have information, but to believe that they can do it. And so if they can't do it, change your topic. And then the third is the implementation. So it's like, how can you activate them? Which is like, go do this thing right now. I can remember I was in network marketing in the audience, and it was a smaller event, maybe 200. And one of the product formulators who was just brilliant was on the stage. And he was like, I don't remember what his call to action was. He was like, I'm going to give you guys all my phone number. Here it is right now. I think a couple people wrote it down. And I shot him a text right then. And I just was like, here's how I got value today. Thank you so much. That was it. Stayed in contact. I mean, I think maybe I texted him twice the next year. A year later, I was hosting my own event in a totally different state. I was actually in Portland and I was in the Bay Area. And I said, would you be willing to come? I didn't have a speaker budget. I had nothing. And he showed up. But I not, that's the thing is like activate people to actually do something so that they don't walk out going, that was cool or that was interesting, whatever. And it stays as shelf-help in their notebook.
Yes.
Like actually do something that will create impact because they get into action. Because it's not just about the information. It's not just about the information. It's that if people take action and they get any result from working with you, when I say working, like listening, being in your energy, they're more likely to work with you because they're going to want to get more of the traction that you already gave them. So that's the impact. And then the T is just track your numbers. And this is as simple as like, if you have a Calendly form, how did you hear about me or who introduced you, right? Because when I started to track this, in the beginning, I was podcasting and guesting and all these things because I was like, this is fun. This is fun. Yay, 7 energy. And then I was like, oh, wow, this is working better than ads. This is working better than like anything else I was doing. And I kept going back to like, I am building a business that serves me. That's why I got out of corporate, doing things I want to do as much of my genius as possible, or I should say, being in my genius as much of the percentage of time as possible. Yeah. So why wouldn't I do the things that excite me? And when I found that podcasting, speaking, like, really connected networking, not trying to get 50 business
Right.
cards, but like, are there 2 or 3 people in this room that I can connect with and I can give them some type of value? Because I know you're a 2, and because I have a lot of 2 in me, it's like, how can I serve someone? Because I'm going to serve them before I ask them for
Yeah.
something. And sometimes the serving is as small as like, I just want to connect you with someone.
Yeah.
But like on the average daily, I'm like making like 3 connections. I have nothing to gain. But when you make those deposits, if you ever need to go back and take a withdrawal, it's really easy to do that when you've given value.
Yes. Such a clear and like actionable framework. I really like that one.
And I mean, it makes money, but the best thing is it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really feels good. And I say like the pitch club is a perfect, really, it's like a personal belief accelerator. Like, yes, it is a business accelerator, but you can't pitch yourself unless you believe in yourself. And I got like the most, can I play a message? Would that be okay? I like live, my clients know this. And so they do this for me, but, let me find it. I got this today, and this is from an Enneagram 5. So if you know anything about the Enneagram, they are like the absolute shyest people, very much introverts. Let me just make sure this is the right one so I don't, play the whole thing. Hold on.
Yeah, I got it too. And I really want to have a friend who.
I'll just basically share, I'll paraphrase it, but she's someone that is so incredibly shy. She is an expert in what she does. She specializes in breast implant illness and detoxing. And I actually worked with her. She was like my practitioner. But she was working for a bigger company, went out on her own, hired me, which was great because I was like, amazing. Like, I actually understand what you do. But she's like, I will never do a podcast. I will like anything that was visible is like, absolutely not.
Yep.
And she started working with us in October. She, in this month, did 5 podcasts, and one of them was a major podcast that got 10,000 downloads in one episode.
Wow.
And she just applied, and I didn't tell her to apply. She applied to speak at a conference that's on breast health.
Wow.
And they said, we've already filled our 2024, but we want to meet with you about having you speak in 2025. And yes, will it turn out to be like, will she get clients from it? 100%. But she's doing it because she's excited to serve and she feels confident in her value.
How beautiful that you welcomed her into your program and held space for her to have that belief that I don't speak on stages, and then got her to a place where she could. Do you have any special rituals for celebrating your wins like that? For me, I jot them down in my journal every day, and I put a gold star next to each one. I know it sounds cheesy, but it was a smile on my face. What about you?
So to your question about gratitude earlier, I mean, the first thing I actually did, so this came in as a voice memo, and a little thing that's really cool on iMessage is you can drag a voice memo from one message to another. So I have a message with my team, and even though we don't typically communicate much by text, we use Slack just for, mental wellness and like, but when I get messages like that, I drop them into my team to hear them because I'm the founder. And so I get a lot of the love.
Yeah.
But I want all of the women to know behind the scenes, like that they're part of this. And I mean, literally I would say it's probably almost a message a day or a screen capture of a text. And like, look at what we're doing.
Beautiful. I want to integrate that.
It's such an easy thing. And I recommend you could have it.
Yeah.
I recommend everyone I call it a life scrapbook. So what I'll do is I'll go through, when I get messages like that, I'll actually drop them into a Google folder because you can drop in voice memos and it just shows up as an MP4 file. And I'll also screen capture, whether it's an email or a text or whatever it is. And then I have all of these like beautiful, they're not even testimonials, even though, by the way, with permission, some of these can be used as the best testimonials because people are in state, right? They're not like, it was a pleasure to work with so-and-so and they got me these results. Like it's really emotion. But I save those because let's be real. Like I've had a lot of success, but I still have failure. Things don't go as planned. I've, got my down days and it's usually a certain time in my cycle when I'm like, oh, this is why I pull up my app and I'm like, oh, it's because I'm the week before my period and
Yes.
I'm feeling withdrawn and not confident. And when things get hard or you go through adversity, to be able to pull up something like that and say like, okay, this is the reason I'm doing it.
Mm.
Because it's really easy if you have one client who is a challenge. And I really am fortunate I don't get many of those, like almost ever. Even if it's like, hey, here's an area you guys can improve. I like really own it. I'm like, oh, thank you. Tell me more. And then we improve it. But when you go just through life, being able to go back to that and see where you've created impact is so meaningful. And it will give you the gas and the belief to keep going.
Yeah, I've been feeling lately that I need to do a better job of, I think someone called it, picturing the gain, not the gap. And this seems like a really nice like exercise to start incorporating in support of
Well, if you're
that.
going to look at the gap, look backwards, not forward.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2017, the idea of even a lead magnet with like an email that came out, I was like, that is like, my mind is just blew up. I don't even understand this. Right. And I look now and I'm like, I have 20,000 people on my email list and we have sequences and like, I'm like, how did this, I mean, it happens because you just do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And ideally hire people that are really good and give you the things that you can't do well.
Well, and then get the mentors that you need in order to
Yes.
get the
So
strategy.
mentorship and support.
Yeah.
Because you can't, I think a lot of people, they want to hire people to do things that they can't do, but they don't even know if it's the right thing. And so getting the mentors like helps you get clarity and focus on what is the right thing at the right time. And then, and the other thing is ideally gives you a referral for the support you need at the price point you can afford.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned you work with a coach or a mentor now, even now that
I have multiple.
Yeah.
I have, so I'm in a marketing mastermind that I have an incredible marketing mentor that has worked at Boss Babe, marketing at ancestry.com. I mean, some major businesses. And then I'm in a mastermind. So I also have mentorship through that. And that's actually a man, which is interesting because I only work with women, but we have the exact same Enneagram tri-type. And his wife is the exact same as my husband. So he's wonderful. And I really love the people in that mastermind. And I have, so outside of those, and last year I had an accountability coach, and which was actually someone like theoretically, let's go lower level. Like she didn't do advanced strategy, but she was great about helping me get really clear each week on what is the most important thing. How am I holding myself accountable? If I didn't do the things that I thought were important, why, what happened, and how can I plan better?
So good.
I have two, I would call them spiritual, coaches, mentors. One that I'm doing some really deep somatic work with. The other is helps me more like kind of in the alignment of content, but I've worked with Enneagram, human design, all the things. And I love that part. Like that's the getting to know myself better. But it also does, advise my business.
Is there something that you learned about yourself recently that just like blew your mind, fired you up?
I was going to say I could write novels about
every day.
Every day. I think all of the learning, it does a couple of things. One is it heals a lot of things that are often either our blind spots or our trigger points or our areas that if we don't, oh my goodness, the dog's coming in. If we don't, what did they say? Like if we resist, it persists, right? So if we don't heal it, it's going to happen again. The other thing is a lot of it is just permission and understanding better myself so I can be more of myself. So I can be more authentic, all of the things that ultimately just bring us more of what we want in the best ways.
Yeah, I think there's such you touched on it earlier, just a sense of peace that it's like a next level of, you talked about the foyer of personal development, but when you start digging deeper, gosh, there's so much magic there. I love that episode.
I'm like in Atlantis. I've like gone under the ocean.
I love that episode that you did on doing the inner work. I think you did it back in November. That was great. And, last year it became really clear to me early last year that I had a confidence problem. And what I learned was that my lack of confidence in certain areas of my business was due to a lack of clarity on my identity. And so I started working with a therapist, and that's been over a year now. And that's been the best thing I've ever done for my business. And then a new business coach to kind of tackle all that stuff head on. And it's doing the work is like, I just never, ever expected myself to find myself in the self-help section of Barnes and Noble, but like, that's where it's at. And
I think the thing is in the beginning, like I think a lot of people are scared to do the work because they're scared of what you're going to find, right? You're scared like this is going to be painful, this is going to be whatever, and we're afraid to like move the boulders or do the inner child work or like revisit things or even just look at the parts of ourselves that could be perceived as weaknesses or as I don't want to say maybe faults, right? And so once you get over that initial hurdle, ideally with the help of someone that's really good at what they do and whatever that area is, and you realize that it doesn't kill you, and it actually usually really improves things. I think it's almost like working out. It's like when you work out and you're sore the next day, it can go one of two ways. You're like, I'm never going to do that again. That hurt. Or you're like, okay, but then a day after that, it's not as sore. And then you start building muscle and you're like, oh, I'm getting stronger. And the more that I do of this, the less sore I get. That's what the inner work is. So I just recognized, even again, as an Enneagram 7 who was like, avoid pain, avoid conflict at all costs. I've realized that the pain is very short. And actually now it's not even pain. It's like, okay, this can be challenging. Like I can do sessions now where I will be like bawling my eyes out with, one of my mentors that are in the spiritual realm. And I get off, I'm like, gosh, I feel so good. Like my energetic hangovers last much, like I don't even get them anymore. Where if you haven't done the work and or if you haven't done the work on a certain thing, you can get triggered about it. And that pain maybe won't be as acute, but it's going to last like weeks or months or, it's going to just jack up your life. And I'm not willing to do that anymore. The stakes are too high in my life, as a mother, in my relationship. Like I'm not willing to let the snowballs roll downhill and become an avalanche.
That's exactly what I told my therapist yesterday. I said, this thing happened recently, and I'm like, and I recovered from it within like 60 seconds. And I was like, a year ago, I know that something similar happened and I spent a day in bed. And I am a person who cannot sit still. I'm like a working dog, must progress forward. And I'm like, I feel so good about this. Like that.
And you recognize what got you there. And now you're like, of course I want to keep doing
let's keep doing it. It's uncomfortable, but let's keep going.
Let's keep going. But in fact, I had someone this year that reached out and she's like, I really would love to work with you. And she's on my list. She's like, I know I'm going to work with her. But I said, not now, because what I have sometimes done in the past, and this is, I think anyone that like loves whether it's growth or strategy, I'm going to go deep, not wide, so that I can really get the most out of it.
Is there a specific, is there a specific like nut you're trying to crack right now that you're going deep with a coach on? I'm kind of like a big believer that if we put it out into the universe, like serendipity gets to work.
Well, I'm halfway through with, she's a spiritual scholar, actually. She's doing like basically a PhD in women's spiritual studies. She's done a lot of, it's all kinds of, I would just say healing work, like quantum healing work with me. And so that's ranged from literally like healing sessions, sound healing, past life regression, which by the way, 7 years ago, if you would have told me that I'd be doing all this, I would have been like, what? I've never been closed to things, but I didn't really start embracing this. I had a therapist, but I didn't start embracing anything outside of therapy until 2020. It's like the first time I did breath work, the first time I did sound bowl healing. And now I'm like, give it all to me. I want it all. And then I work with someone that works with my my astrological chart, which again, I would have been like, wait, what? You're gonna base your business off astrology? But it's really about, I would say often it just validates. It's like, oh, I had this intuitive hit or this feeling, and this is making me feel less crazy about it. It's giving me permission to lean more into things or to lean out of things. And And those are the two I'm working with right now. But I think in different seasons, like whether it's a coach or it's a therapist, I think that it depends on what you're looking for, right? And so often 2 or 3 years, and you might be like, okay, like I've gotten what I needed for this chapter. Now, I hope obviously my clients, none of them feel that. Some of them have been with me 3 years, but I'm also have a really high commitment to evolution myself, and I'm always bringing them
Mm,
along with me. So even what like they experienced 3 years ago, the reason that people renew or is because we're always like not adding things from an overwhelm standpoint, but like we're always just improving and optimizing,
yes.
and the opportunities that we're doing are bigger, and then with that the opportunities that they're getting are bigger. So now I've had multiple clients who've gone through my mastermind that have now had their own events, who have had created 6 figures from stage, and a lot of them have used my director of marketing to like build out a funnel for them, or their marketing, or like help them craft their sale, their presentation, all those things. But that's the amazing thing, is when I can see them like literally just 2 years behind getting the same results in the way that's unique to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to have a little fun for just a moment and do some
Do it.
brainstorming. I know
Yeah.
that you've got so much momentum happening with Weekend at the Pitch Club and Inner Circle. What's next? What are you dreaming about for the next 1 to 3 years that puts a smile on your face?
Good question. Oh, I know I'm a fire starter. Um, so I like things to be new and interesting, and again, that's why I always add things and I always optimize, because the idea of like, oh, it's good, let's just leave it be. I'm like, no, no, no. There can be continued refinement. We will never take away things that are valuable. We will only add,
Sure.
but we will take away things that we can create something better. Um, so speaking of mastermind and why it's so important to be in the room, in my mastermind, the mastermind that I was in when I first joined it. So this will be 2022. Yeah, so this was the third year. So it'll be 2 years ago in March. I got paired up with a guy in a partner exercise. And again, I'm like, I only work with women. I hardly, like, outside of my son and husband, never talk to guys. And because of the inner work I had been doing at the time, normally, like, he gave me like a challenge he was going through. Normally I'd been like, oh, here's a strategy. And I actually said, you know what? I don't know this area. And I could give you a few ideas, but I think what I'm intuitively feeling for you, and that's the other thing, is the permission as a coach that has a ton of strategy and has managed $1 billion in sales, like done all these things, is to actually just tap into my intuition, not into my
Mm-hmm.
brain sometimes. I said, what I'm intuitively feeling for you is like, I want to offer you breath work. I had gotten breathwork certified a few months before because I was bringing it into my community, and I was like, I need to stop just hiring people to come in and be able to facilitate it myself. I said, if you like breathwork, if that like appeals to you, and he's like, I've never done anything like this. I've never meditated. I was like, meet me tomorrow morning at 7. Like we worked out at the gym, um, and I met him at 7, and ended up 2 other people were like, I want to do this too. So I had him and another girl who had never done breathwork, and then a woman who owns a institute that certifies people in breathwork, somatics, NLP, Reiki. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, a little intimidating. But I did it for him, and he had some breakthroughs come up and some clarity. And he came about 2 weeks later, he texted me. He's like, hey, can we jump on a phone call? I was like, okay. I'm like, this guy actually is from Minnesota. And he's like, I just have to tell you, like, that was so profound for me.
Mm.
And he's like, I've had this idea for a few years, and I think you're the person to help me bring it to life. And I'm like, okay. And I said, first of all, I have no bandwidth, but of course I need to hear what this is. And I said, he owns, he runs a clean beauty company,
Okay.
and they create products for other people too. And they've got products in Ulta, Sephora, Target. And I said, well, I'm assuming this is a product. He's like, yeah. And I go, well, what's the product? And he goes, it doesn't really matter because it's about the culture. And I said, that is the most LA answer I've ever heard from a guy from Minnesota. Right. And then he explained, and long story short, it's a give back company in the clean beauty space. But what he meant is literally, he's like, we can formulate almost anything, like,
Yeah.
And so we've been working on that. It'll be a little over 2 years by the time we launch. We brought in a third partner, but it's going to be women owned. So he is involved, but like we've got 2 other female founders, myself included. And one of them is a woman of color, sustainable, and give back. It is like the evolved way of doing business. And I do see the pitch club, like I do feel we do that. We give scholarships. We're like very much about collaboration and community. This is like the physical
Mm-hmm.
example. And one that would have never happened had I been in a mastermind. And they asked me to be the CEO, and I was like, okay, wait a second. I know nothing about that's not true. We do PR for product-based
Okay.
businesses, and I have sold product-based, but I'm like, I've never ran a product-based business, right, outside of real estate. And him and the other woman who she's like a genius in shipping and fulfillment and Shopify. They're like, yes, but one, you've done sales, marketing, and PR, and it doesn't matter how good they are at formulating. Like, we have to get it out into the world. But they're like, you're just the right person, and we've really grown. Like, I feel like we're a little family now. So that will come out this year, and I love everything I'm doing at the Pitch Club, and I love that I'm creating like these lights that like get brighter as they work together. This is going to be able to impact people outside of the world of entrepreneurship and in their daily lives. And, specifically like the give back where our plan is it'll be giving back to families that are going through childhood cancer. So if they have a child experiencing cancer, most people don't know that not only is there a huge divorce rate, but many times the parent has to quit their job. Well, even if treatment is covered by insurance. And I lost, before my husband, I lost my boyfriend to cancer. And right before that, his nephew, like while he was going through treatment, his nephew passed of cancer at 12. And I saw firsthand like the devastation that creates.
Yeah.
And so we all agree that we want to be able to help and like tangibly see that. So that's what I'm excited about is doing something that is new-ish, but with a team that is so incredible that I get to stay in my genius and they're doing the things in it. I don't want to like jinx things and say it actually feels easy, but there's so much alignment that we haven't so far ran into any challenges. Now, knock on my marble desk that, I'm sure things will come up, but I think it's just a representation of when you're in alignment, you're in integrity, you're in collaboration, you're clear about what you can contribute, and you give other people credit for where their genius is, like magical things happen. And you're in the room because that's where it started.
Being in the room is everything.
It is.
So as we wrap up, I have one last question. I value lifelong learning so much. And I also subscribe to the school of thought that we must design our own curriculum with intention. And so before we wrap up, I'd love to know 3 parts. What are you reading right now? Why did you pick that book? And then what's one thing you learned from it?
Okay, so I am finishing up the 12-week year because I love the idea of that type of planning from both a just effectiveness proficiency standpoint and also looking at things in kind of in sprints. Because I, working for a publicly traded company that had a fiscal year, I was like, oh, it's really interesting how we do 24% of our closing revenue in the last 30 days of the year. And that's during the holidays. That was miserable. So that one, I love time management and optimization. And again, not just about being effective, but about like really having spaciousness. So that one, and then I'm going from that into traction. And we're doing that one because I think I haven't read it and I've heard amazing things about it. But also personally, I just finished last night. So I read fiction at night and I listen to Audible books when I'm like doing, other things. I read fiction like on my Kindle. I just finished the Sarah Moss, oh my goodness, Throne of Glass, 15,000 pages, the series.
It's a huge accomplishment.
I have been reading that. I've been reading that for like, I don't even know, 6 months maybe. And so I just started the Crescent City. It's fantasy. It's amazing. And I really missed when I wasn't reading fiction because that's how I got into like really lifelong learning is by being a reader.
Yeah, I did not get into lifelong learning until I met Audible. And that wasn't until like 7 years ago because everything that was handed in school I didn't like. And so I thought I wasn't a reader. And what a shame that is to not learn until you're 35, 36 years old that you don't read. And now I can't put them down. I'm just like, give them
Right.
all to me. I want to keep reading, and there's
Absolutely.
so much to know, and it's helping me in so many ways, and it's so exciting.
So yeah, that's what I'm reading, and the business books are to continue to
Yeah.
grow. I do want to make it through Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza, but I picked that up a few times and I haven't been able to. But I would say, just if someone wants a book recommendation, I think The Go Giver is probably the Go Giver and The Big Leap are probably my two favorite books of all time, um, followed by probably Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Um, the Have you read The Big
I
Leap?
have. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Gay Hendricks, like understanding your zones of genius, excellence, competence. And there, I don't know that there's a book on this, but I would just say the other thing in lifelong learning and growth is the concept of ikigai.
Mm. I haven't heard of that.
And that's a Japanese concept. Oh my goodness. So it's a Japanese concept that basically means, well, it can translate to different things, but basically life
Okay.
purpose. And think of it as a Venn diagram of four. If you just Google it, it's IKIGAI.
Okay.
And it's the circles of like, so a lot of times people are like, what are you good at? What do you enjoy? What can you make money at? Right. But it adds a fourth of what the world needs.
Mm.
And so it's like, okay, if you do what you're paid for and what you're good at, it's a profession. If you do what you're good at and what you love, it's your passion. If you do then you add in what the world needs. If you do what you're paid for and what the world needs, it's a vocation. And what you love and what the world needs, it's a mission. But when you put all of those together, your passion, your mission, your profession, your vocation, that's ikigai. And I wish they would teach this to kids when they were like 12 years old. Because if you focus on those four quadrants and you end up in the middle, that is yes, you'll probably still work a day in your life, because even in that, there's going to be things that are going to be hard and uncomfortable. Yeah. But I always just look at what is that center for me. And the second thing is give yourself permission to evolve. Right? Give yourself permission to evolve, because we're not static human beings. And your mission will grow and your talents will grow, and the world will need different things at different times.
That's so beautiful. I wish we could talk forever about what should be taught in schools, but it's a whole nother podcast.
I know. I mean, I'm teaching my son to be an entrepreneur, and we play a lot of board games, and I think board games and reading and things that are learning, that are not like maybe outside of like the academic structure.
You have the board game, because that's probably a good age for it. Do you have the junior version of the Rich Dad Poor Dad game, Cash Flow?
No, I will go get that one. We do our favorites, because he's actually really getting into categories right now, which is great. I let him have double points. I used to be triple, but he's getting good enough that I'm like, no, you're beating me at triple points. So we do Catan. We do a game called Splendor, Azul. I try to avoid the Monopoly and the Risk and the really long games that are like 2 hours and never get done. But we try to do a board game. We do a board game just about every day, except right now he's very into reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So he does that in the mornings. Like I'm like, can you please keep eating? Like I'm like now brushing his hair, like helping him get his socks on. And he's 8. He can do, he'll be 8 in 2 weeks. He can do all those things, but he won't get his nose out of the book. And that was me as a kid. So I'm like, I am not going to shame or judge you for this. It is a beautiful thing, but like I still need.
That's a really good problem to have.
Yes, it's a great problem. It's got much quieter in my house when we got into those bugs.
Rebecca, what have you got going on right now that we should know about, and where can Lynchman Nation find you?
Well, I mean, I'm always on Instagram, and I've got my podcast, Becoming You. We will be launching season 6 in February, right around my birthday, so middle of February, and we'll have another weekend at the Pitch Club in September in Phoenix or Scottsdale, and I highly recommend that. It is magical. I always say this every weekend at the Pitch Club. I say it's like my wedding, except I don't have to share it. Right? I get to choose everything. I mean, with my team, it is just a magical bubble of belief. There is some strategy, but it's really about belief and connections and getting clarity. And everything I've talked about, the information, the inspiration, the integration, like everyone leaves with a nice little bow. And you also will probably have some magical experiences, because I I can't say what we're doing for next time. We have an unbelievable experience that we are bringing in that's next level. But this last one, it was actually a full moon. And we didn't realize this would happen at like literally like 1:11 it was a full moon and the eclipse. But I did hypno breath work, and then had the meditation part was a sound healer that was doing it with energy workers in the room. I had 4 energy workers at every corner, and I was doing Reiki myself. And it was like, I mean, we had so many people that had massive breakthroughs, like tears, but it was such a clean energy. And it was a palpable feeling that even people that have been to my other events are like, that was one of the wildest things I've ever experienced. But yes, you'll get business strategy too.
You're tugging at my heartstrings. This is so exciting.
Oh my gosh. Come. Oh my goodness. I will give you a ticket.
You're so sweet.
It is yours. And the other thing is for those people that want to speak, right? We will be doing, if you go to my website on Weekend at the Pitch Club and get more information, we will be doing opening for speakers pretty soon. So both keynotes and then also for roundtables. And so last time I think I want to say we had about 18 roundtable speakers and like 10 keynotes. And I did take 1 or 2 of the keynotes through application. They weren't all people I knew. I had a couple that were so exceptional. And a lot of the roundtable speakers were applications. Oh, and a little pro tip, if you want to speak, 1, include a speaker reel.
Yes.
If you don't have a speaker reel, include Instagram reel of you speaking. But the thing that impressed me the most, and I actually asked this woman to open up our VIP night with a networking exercise, and she did a call to action in that. So every single person at that VIP event, which was about 75 women at the VIP night, all of them connected with her on social, and they tagged her as part of this little challenge she did. She sent me a personalized video. And I was like, what? I am doing this. But it literally was like a 3-minute video. And she also sent, some speaking things. She's like, hey, Rebecca. So like she did a little research like you. She's like, I'm so excited to serve you at Weekend at the Pitch Club. Had great energy. But just that level of just like 3 minutes of customization wowed me, because I had 70 something applications and no one did anything like that except her. So she stood out. So stand out.
Gosh, it's so easy to stand out with just a little bit of intention.
It's so easy, but often we don't do the things that are really, really easy.
That aren't scalable. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to link all that up in the show notes. Rebecca, it's been a magical time here tonight with you. Thank you for coming onto the show, and I appreciate you so much.
Likewise. Well, I would love to have you back on mine. I will send you the link.
Thank
because
you.
My audience needs to hear everything that you have. And actually, a lot of the women in my mastermind do as well.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Greenroom Central podcast. If you loved this episode, then please take a screenshot on your phone and post it to Instagram, and be sure to tag @SarahPfeiffer and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear, or who you'd like to hear from in the future. That'll help me know what to create for you. Also, if scaling events in your business sounds like something you want to tackle this year and you need a coach, let's connect to see if one-on-one coaching is for you. Just go to greenroomcentral.com. You and I can work together one-on-one throughout the course of the year and dive deep into the inner workings of your events and business. You'll receive mentorship, personalized feedback, and customized guidance to define your goals and achieve your next level of success. Just go to greenroomcentral.com right now to apply. I appreciate your commitment to leveling up and learning the mindset and strategy of live events. Keep going. Keep learning. If you want more, head over to greenroomcentral.com for show notes and all the links from today's episode.